So, Berto, I thought I would do something that every other podcaster and radio show does, is you got to have like a Halloween special podcast episode. What do you say? Let's do it.
Boo.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor, and I am not someone that typically makes episodes for holidays, except for this time. Who are you, Berto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I design spooky decorations for your window.
Although 13 years ago, we did make an episode about Halloween costumes. We filmed it.
Oh yeah,
overlooking the Space Needle.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, we were on Queen Anne. Anyway,
oh my gosh.
So top 5 Halloween scary movies. Berto, start with your number 5.
Okay. So these are movies, not TV shows.
Or TV shows.
Well, I had 2 separate lists.
Oh,
I didn't interleave them. So I'll start with the movies. Number 5, Scream.
Okay.
Scream, it's not like the greatest movie ever, but it's really entertaining. And it plays with the genre, and it did some very creative things, you know.
Yeah, I think I saw it in the theater and liked it, but didn't know it was going to be the phenomenon that it became.
Right, yeah. Number 4, House of a Thousand Corpses. This is a Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah.
I realize it's not for everyone, but it is very gory and creepy, and I love it.
Yeah.
And plus, he creates these very entertaining characters.
I think he's making a new Munsters
is he?
Movie. Yeah.
Okay. Number 3. By the way, his Halloween wasn't bad. It was entertaining.
Okay.
Number 3, Witch. The witch with the 2 V's.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Witch. This was so... it slipped by me.
Yeah.
Came out, I never saw it, and then after... I guess it was after Midsummer.
No, before.
It was before.
Which was first?
No, I know, but I mean, after I saw Midsummer, someone said, "Oh, you must have loved Witch." I'm like, "Oh, I've never seen it."
Yeah.
So I had to go back and watch it, and I just loved it.
Yeah, for those, so just getting off to this start, I don't watch horror movies. Berto does. So classics I've seen, Halloween 1 and 2, Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of stuff. But like, I would guess 98% of horror movies, even the popular ones, I have not seen.
Right.
It's just not my genre. Even the good ones, I'm like, like, what was it? Let the Right One In? Was that the the Scandinavian one?
It's a vampire one, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone, it's not. It's like it subvert. That was one of the very first. It subverts the horror. It's not just horror. It's artsy horror, and I got like half of the way through. I was like, "This is just another stupid horror movie," and it's fine, you know what I mean? I whenever I hear someone say like, "I don't understand sci-fi," like it's stupid, like, or I don't understand fantasy, like some people just say, "I don't like Marvel movies," and I'm always like, "How do you not like Marvel movies?" You know, I could see how you're not. They're not your favorite, like, but I don't understand how you can't even watch them.
But you're like that with horror.
But I'm like that with horror. Like I can't. I'll get halfway through. I'll be this is stupid. Like because horror it's like a genre of music. It follows a formula, and people like want that, right?
Well, and most horror movies, which I definitely very much enjoy, but most of them are cheap in that. They have that moment where it jumps the shark. Like almost every horror movie has a moment in which they keep the suspense, and then they finally have to like fish or cut bait, and they show the supernatural thing.
Right.
And usually the rest of the movie is kind of boring after that.
Right.
But I still like it just because I like the genre.
Yeah.
But the movies I'm listing don't actually have that.
So along those lines, when Witch came out with what's her name? Joy.
I don't know her name.
She was
fabulous.
She's from Queen's Gambit.
Yeah,
that woman. Great. It's his
big eyes.
First time. Yeah, first time I'd ever. She looks like it could be your sister. You got big eyes.
That's true.
But I when I saw that movie, I don't know, because it wasn't sold to me as a horror movie, but it definitely has a horror. I guess it's riffing on it, kind of. It's more like an Aronofsky movie to me, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't like horror, which is really interesting, it can get kind of scary at times, slightly, but it's much more grounded in reality, and until the very end, which you could argue is sort of a supernatural or a dream sequence, if you will. it's
you can
all
take it either way. Yep.
yeah, it all could have happened, and it gives you a glimpse of maybe even what it was like to live on the frontier 300 years ago in the United States.
Yeah, there's plausible deniability for sure.
Yeah.
I love it. And it just gave me this eerie feeling. I didn't even watch it in the theater. I watched it at home, but it was very late. It was like 1 a.m. and it was just eerie. Oh, man.
Yeah, and so many little things about the movie where, like all the family sleeps in the same room, and the way the mom was kind of suspicious of the oldest daughter.
And they're so isolated. They don't live in the city.
Right.
And it's like 200 years ago or something. It's
Right.
empty.
Right. And the way the movie interweaves like religion and plausible religious dogma around like demon possession and that kind of thing.
I gotta say, goat eyes are inherently disturbing. All right, number 2, Alien.
Oh yeah.
Alien is, you would think it's a sci-fi movie. It's like an amazing horror movie.
Yeah.
And it holds up so well all these many years later.
Yeah.
And it's got a female heroine, like strong female protagonist back in the 70s, right? Yeah. So good. And one of the best movie monsters of all time.
Yeah.
What a scary creation.
And what, like 82 or something?
No, 78.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Just a couple years after, or 1 year after Star Wars, and the special effects, and I mean, it's better than every other movie after it that's in that genre.
Yeah.
Like no one even comes close.
I mean, because with all those movies, like the good movies of that type, the only parts where you can obviously see where they couldn't possibly have done it right are the computer monitors, because it was literally impossible to predict or do something. But in terms of like what the spaceship and how they move around and just like the emptiness of space, all that stuff, they got it so well, right in quotes, but it feels right.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
My brother named his dog Jones after the cat.
Oh, nice. Okay, and number 1 movie for me, The Omen. The original Omen with Gregory Peck and Damien.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I feel like I saw parts of it when I was a kid, but for whatever reason. And I think you've recommended that I watch it.
I have recommended it. It is, first of all, it's a good movie. It's just a good movie.
I have a little list here of things I'm going to watch.
And the thing about it, it's not gory. Well, sorry, no, that's not entirely true. There is a little bit of gore. But what it isn't is it doesn't have flying ghosts and flying witches and things.
Yeah.
It's grounded, again, pretty much in reality, but with that little superset of the supernatural. And the acting is superb, and they build this scary tension, and it's all about the interactions with the characters. The kid was cast beautifully because he's this, cherub-looking little cute kid, but at the same time, he's got this malice in his eye, and you could just tell, like, yeah, he's probably the demon child. And I was Catholic when I watched that. I was a kid, and all of us in Catholic school, we were terrified of this movie, and we would like discuss theories, and we would read the apocalypse chapters in the Bible, and we'd be like, oh my gosh, it does say that. And what if, the Antichrist is supposed to come from the sea of politics? What if he's alive right now? Like, we were freaked out by it because we felt like, oh, this could be real. So it left such an impact. And then years later, I've watched it many times, and it's never disappointed. So that's my number 1. And then quickly through the TV shows, I don't watch a lot of horror TV shows. So this list was both hard and easy for me because I was looking.
There aren't that many.
Right. Well, and I was looking through lists.
So just a little, I texted Berto, top 5 movies and TV shows, and he interpreted it as top 5 movies, top 5 TV shows. I only included TV shows because there was one on my top 5.
I see.
That was a TV show.
Oh, okay.
But
now that makes
rare.
sense because I looked through the list of like the best horror TV shows, and most of them I didn't know.
Right.
But I did come up with 5. Number 5, cheating a little bit, but Simpsons Treehouse of Horror.
Okay.
Those are, well, I don't know nowadays, but they used to be so entertaining. Every Halloween, the Simpsons would put out the little Treehouse of Horror.
It's so interesting to think about how today we don't, and everyone says this now, so it's nothing new, but we don't have the water cooler TV shows or entertainment. But back then, everyone watched the Simpsons Halloween special.
Yep. And then you'd be like, oh my God. And then they did this. Okay. Number 4, American Horror Story. Mostly like the first couple seasons, I was really into it. And as far as like a horror TV show, like that's definitely what that is.
Was it like episodic? Like each episode was?
Each season was a story.
Oh.
But each season, every episode was part of that story.
Okay.
And then the next season is a totally different story. I think the first 2 seasons are pretty good. After
when
that,
did it come out?
Kinda lost me. Like 10 years ago?
Okay.
Yeah. Number 3, I bet you this one's on your list. Stranger Things.
Right. That's my number 2. Duffer Brothers. Love it so much. And some might say, is that horror? And it's not classic like Halloween or Friday the 13th horror, but it definitely has a monster. There's jump scares. There's trapped in a house in the woods with a monster.
It's filmed in a way and in a time where a lot of those movies were made in a similar sense, you know,
right.
like it's the 80s or the late 70s and you're in those little residential streets and everyone's out trick-or-treating and
right.
I consider it, that's why I put it in my list.
Yeah, and for me, the reason why I put it number 2 is because, you know, it's so high on the list is that it's particularly the first season and really all the seasons are just so delightful and so I mean I think they're good pieces of entertainment and art, but obviously they're geared exactly for our generation with all the references to all the things from our childhood, but not in a way that's like, you know, I don't know, gratuitous. It feels integrated into a story rather than just like a nostalgia, you know, dinner served.
I definitely agree. Whereas like Ready Player One is gratuitous.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. So we did a whole episode on Ready Player One, and I was geeking out hardcore on that movie, and I think it's apparent in my review when we talked about it. Mm-hmm. Subsequently, I've watched scenes and thought about it more, and like I don't think I've ever had such a swing in my rating of a movie. I think coming out of the movie theater, I was like an 8 or a 9. I mean, I was the amount of 80s nostalgia that was pumped into my brain, like, you know, adventure and all this stuff. But then later on, the more and particularly the more I heard from critics, I'm like, actually, this movie's kind of stupid. Like, there's a lot of things about it that are just kind of ridiculous.
I think if you had read the book does. It's not a great literary book. It's his first book. At that point, he's not that great of a writer. There's not a lot of character development. That said, the 80s nostalgia is super strong and, in my opinion, plays a little better in the book. But anyways.
But is the story better in the book? Because the story in the movie is like...
It's fundamentally the same, but I'd say the challenges are way more interesting in the book. In the movie... I guess those filmed well, but they're dumb challenges.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing about, well, we got to race this way. And I mean, you play video games. Every time you play a video game, you're always trying weird stuff.
Yeah.
The idea that for years, no one had thought to try to drive in reverse. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyways, and my number 2 is Black Mirror. Black Mirror.
Oh, I didn't think of that as horror.
Technically a techie show, but it's, of course...
It has horror episodes.
It's got so many horror elements to it. And therefore, my number 1 is Twilight Zone. Because Black Mirror is sort of like the updated techie version of Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone is the ultimate. And it's such a great show. I'm talking about the old black and white Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So many episodes. And they are fairly horrific in a sense. You know?
I don't know. I mean, I saw lists where they were putting Twilight Zone as a horror show. And I was like, I don't know. Like... That's really stretching it. Maybe there was 1 or 2 episodes that, you know, maybe dip into horror, you know, where there's a horror. I guess it's like, what to you is the horror genre?
Well, I think
definition.
All of the Twilight Zone episodes.
Things that are scary.
Yeah, and dystopian and
but really dystopian,
weird.
Because you can have dystopian things that aren't horror.
That's fair. But in this case, maybe because of the way they filmed it, it was always... foreboding,
I mean,
bad endings.
The one with
tragedy,
Shatner in it on the airplane,
yeah,
very much like a horror esque.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. All right. Well, my list is number 5, What We Do in the Shadows movie, 2014. Have you seen this movie?
Is this the one of the I've seen part of this.
Oh my God, you have to watch this 10 times.
The same dudes from Australia, right? The
New Zealand. It's
New Zealand.
Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi.
Because I watched their TV show of it.
Yeah, the
and then they
TV
made a
show.
movie.
The TV show did not grab me. I've seen scenes and enjoyed it, but
I think that's why I didn't watch the whole movie. And maybe that was unfair, is because I liked the TV show, but I didn't love the TV show.
I flat out did not like the TV show. I've seen scenes because I think it's been on for a number of years now, and I think they got into a rhythm later on. But to me, it was like nothing like the movie in my mind. It wasn't.
Okay. I'll give it another shot.
It wasn't nearly as funny. Like Taika Waititi, Jermaine Clement, and the other guy, and it's just the funniest. And so What We Do in the Shadows. If Jermaine Clement, Taika Waititi, they did another one of my favorite shows of all time, which is Flight of the Conchords. Taika Waititi did Jojo Rabbit, which is one of my favorite movies. He did Thor Ragnarok.
Right.
He's doing a new Star Wars movie, by the way.
Which, what?
I don't know, like some upcoming, yeah. Oh. My number 4 is The Ring, 2000.
Oh, I forgot about The Ring.
2002, Naomi Watts.
I regret not having the original, the Japanese Ringu.
Yeah.
That is so creepy. I regret not having that on my list. You have a good one there.
I've never seen the Japanese one, but I've seen the American one, and shot here in Seattle. And I remember watching it on a tiny 13-inch color, tube TV with a VCR, and watching it in bed.
In a VCR? Oh, God.
Yeah, in a VCR, right.
VCR tape.
Yeah, and, talk about not really a very good home theater with probably mono speaker or something, but it was terrifying to me. This movie, I guess now that I think about it, it's like, well, why would I like The Ring, but dislike, as an adult, pretty much any of the Halloween movies or the Friday the 13th movies or the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, or, what is it about The Ring at the age of, I guess I would have been 31, that, was it didn't pull me out. The horror in that movie didn't pull me out of the movie. I think it's because there wasn't like a slasher element to it.
And a lot of the elements they were showing at the time weren't tired out, because like eventually every horror movie had the janky movement creatures with the hair on their faces.
Right.
But at that time, we hadn't seen it in the US that much or at all. The Japanese one, I'd say the US one is great. The only reason the Japanese one is even slightly scarier, A, because I saw it first, but B, it's just lower budget, and that kind of gave it an extra creepiness.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's...
Number 3, The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
1973. So scary. And I don't know what I would think of it if I saw it for the first time today, but I saw it as a teen or a kid.
Yeah, that would freak you out.
And to this day, last night, Stacy and I were at a movie trivia night, movie cat trivia at Central Cinema. It's every month, by the way. If you want to go with me,
I want to go next time.
I think we actually went one time.
I think so.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, they did it on Twitch every Wednesday night. Didn't you join me one time? I thought you did.
I think so.
Anyway, during the pandemic, Stacy and I, and you were
during
too.
During the pandemic, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
During the pandemic, Stacy and I were extremely buttoned up about not leaving the house and not doing anything. Like, we got our groceries delivered. We wiped everything down. Like, we were buttoned up.
Yeah.
So the one thing we did that was regular and social was doing this movie cat trivia thing on Twitch,
Right.
And so to see them in person last night. But anyway, they had audio clips of different horror movies and to identify. And when they have that, one of those classic scenes from The Exorcist, like it just gives me chills. That movie is, and it's funny because the special effects are pretty 1973, and the premise is pretty simple. and it's heavily religious as well,
Right.
very Catholic. But there's something about the way that they made that. It felt grounded in a way or something, and real to me.
Absolutely, and which is why I'm fairly certain. Well, it's weird because now it's so many years, but that's what made The Omen great as well. It's very grounded. It's got all those same things. It's very religious, all these things, but it's grounded.
And number 2, Stranger Things. You already talked about it. By the way, I assume there's going to be another season at some point.
I heard so.
Yeah. And number 1, drum roll please, The Thing.
Oh yeah, it's great.
1982, John Carpenter.
Oh yeah, so good.
Directed it, Kurt Russell. I watched this movie, The Thing, dozens of times in the 80s. I would watch it over and over and over again. There's so many aspects to the movie because it's horror, I guess, but it's also sci-fi, it's action, it's funny, and it's interesting because the way, if you don't know, I can tell you the premise. Essentially, this alien virus,
A goop.
starts to infect this Antarctic expedition science station. There's 15 dudes in this science station, and this alien that can turn into different animals that it comes into contact with, including humans. And what it does is it infects you and takes you over. And so at some point they're like, okay, one of us might be an alien.
And you don't know, it's not easy to tell.
Right.
Yeah.
Like one of us might be an alien, but we don't know that. And so how are we going to figure it out? And so long story short, they do this very slow scientific process to determine who's the alien, who's not. And that scene it was so different. And I think even to this day, because today a writer wouldn't have it. They'd be like, there's got to be a chase scene or.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that annoys me, what's that movie that came out that is, it's like an alien thing. It came out right around the same time as The Arrival, but it was the other movie. There was this bubble that had covered a huge, large area, and if you go through it, no one had come back. Annihilation. Yeah. Everyone loves that movie. Oh, it's the greatest movie ever.
No. People didn't like Annihilation.
Oh, people love Annihilation.
Well,
in fact, some people.
I'm sure some
we
people.
know.
I'm sure some people love Annihilation, but overall, the audience was very confused by Annihilation.
Okay, so people I know that love
and
it.
I liked it too.
Well, here's my problem with it. That thing you're saying, there was no sense of intellectual curiosity, and it annoyed me so much because they're like, hey, none of these teams have come back. Oh shoot, well, let's send another team.
Right, exactly. So just to drill down this a little bit, we've actually talked about this before, but so in the South, in the United States, there's this giant bubble that is growing, and it's shimmering, and it's changing things on the inside. It'll change a crocodile into a half crocodile, half horse or something.
A crocodile.
And they send in drones and scientists, and nothing comes back. And they're just like, what's going on, And instead of well, let's at the very least let's show all the different ways that the top minds of the world, by the way, because the entire world would be concerned about this giant bubble that's seemingly destroying the earth, would come up with, see what they would come. Instead, it's just well, let's just send four women.
Another team.
Yeah.
Because
with no extra equipment or anything.
As I'm watching it, I'm at the beginning, I'm like, okay, I have some questions. Raise my hand.
Yeah.
How far in do you lose contact? Immediately? Is it 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters? And it's there are so many tests we could do.
Yeah. To me, I felt like they dealt with it well enough, and I liked it. But yeah, so the audience, so what do you think Rotten Tomatoes critics percentage?
70.
88.
88. Okay, see, that's what I thought.
Because so people blah, blah, blah.
I know, yeah.
Audience.
Okay, maybe it was the audience. 50.
66.
Okay.
Yeah. But a pretty big difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference. So I was in more.
I'm surprised it was that high at 66 because. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So The Thing, I watched it over and over and over again. It's great. Okay, honorable mentions, of which I was surprised there were this many. Blair Witch Project,
Oh yeah, that was fun.
I've talked about this before, but just to, say it again, is that there were newspaper articles written about this movie saying it was not fake, that it was real.
Yeah.
And this was in 98 or something, when we didn't really know, and the internet certainly wasn't there helping us out. Maybe it was 2001-ish. Anyway.
We were a lot less cynical back then.
Yeah. And there weren't any stars in the movie. And the first, I don't know, hour, all of it was completely plausible. There was nothing in it that was implausible. And I saw it opening night, packed theater in the U District. When I was walking out of the theater, people were debating whether or not it was real or not real. And the consensus, and it was a huge crowd, because it was like immediate, because this is before Twitter, so you had to actually talk to human beings, God forbid. And there's this huge crowd of people outside the movie theater just kind of like debating this. And the consensus was it was real. And I was like, but the one thing that really, because I was assuming it was real until the very last, and things started happening toward the end. I was like, wait, what? And then the one thing that I was like, nope, there's no way that happened, was the very last scene. There, the guy's holding a camera, and presumably he gets killed, and he falls over, and the camera lands on the ground, and the last shot you see is, oh my God, it gives me just chills just thinking.
Spoiler alert.
Is this someone standing in the corner?
Yeah.
Okay. As a camera person myself, I can tell you that if you just drop a camera, the chance that it will land on your subject is so small that I was like, no.
And it wasn't like he sat down and put the camera down. It's crashed to the ground.
Right. He just like,
and this is a late 90s camera that would have broken.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Like, it didn't break. Yeah. But anyway.
But the reason I was fairly certain it was not is because I just kept thinking, like, the families of these people would not be like, yeah, sure, put this out there.
Well, but did you see this a ways after? And
no, I saw it when it came out.
Oh, okay.
It's just, I was like, I don't know. I was like, how would you, because I was thinking, if this really was found footage of some disappear, it's not like you can't tell who they are. They're very obvious who they are. So their families would know who they are.
Yeah.
And so therefore...
but, yeah, totally. Looking back, and I always feel defensive because people now who didn't go through that with me are like, how could you possibly have thought that was real? But I'm always like, I'm a skeptical person. I'm not a pushover. I'm extremely skeptical of things.
You're absolutely right that the consensus at the time from a lot of people was, I think this is real.
Because they literally lied to us.
Yeah.
It wasn't, here's a movie about like a fake movie. They said, this is a movie that actually, it's a documentary, is what they were saying it was. And so... yeah, I mean, I'd never been lied to by newspapers telling me something.
Because all the ads had that voiceover in the this found footage, blah blah blah.
Well, I don't even know if I'd seen the trailers. I just remember seeing in the because that was another thing back then, was that is sort of time forgotten, that in order to just choose a movie, I would go to the newspaper.
Oh,
because how else would you even know what a movie?
I remember the little descriptions. Yeah. That's so funny.
And the movie times were in the newspaper. Right. So you'd go to the newspaper and you'd peruse the movies.
Well, I remember at that point we had Movie Phone. Remember, the times for Mortal Kombat Annihilation are 9:30.
But that would take so long.
It did,
because it would go through every single time. Yeah. Anyway,
press 1 for
Cabin in the Woods.
Oh yeah,
good movie.
Great, and another one that subverts the genre.
Yeah, to this day, stays every time that, and times when it's not related, Stacy will bring that up, because I was trying. Everyone was trying to figure out what I might have even gone with you, but everyone's like, "Oh, we got to go to this movie, Cabin in the Woods," and I'm like, "Hey, Stacy, come," and she's like, is it a horror movie? And at that time, I didn't really know.
We did go together, because I remember Stacy being there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I told her, I was like, I don't like horror movies.
Right.
So from what I understand, it's supposed to be like a riff, like a jokey riff on the horror movie, which is absolutely true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for her, like, because she really doesn't like horror movies, that movie was traumatic for her.
Super traumatic. Yeah.
Even though it's a joke from beginning to end.
I remember this, and it was so interesting because if you're not into that, it doesn't matter that it's a send up or a kind of a
because it's cartoony. You know, like when all the monsters come out and there's all the blood.
Because there's a twist,
Yeah, because I don't. It doesn't.
You don't see the twist coming, and even if you see the twist coming, if you don't like that genre, it's still gonna hit you the way it would have hit you.
Right. Warm Bodies with Nicholas Hoult.
Oh yeah, that's also funny. That's the zombie one, right?
Yeah, World War Z with Brad Pitt. Firestarter with a young Drew Barrymore.
I don't think I ever saw that. What is that?
It's I believe a Stephen King story. And Firestarter.
Oh, maybe I have seen that.
Early 80s. This was another movie that I watched over and over again. It's kind of interesting. I'm surprised people don't talk about it more because it's basically a superhero, kind of like a more gritty superhero movie the way you would see today, where there's a kid and the father has an ability and the daughter has an ability and they're on the run. They're trying. The government or this corporation is trying to get
I haven't
them.
Seen this.
And they're fugitives. This relationship between the father and daughter, and there's just something
Sounds
about
like
this.
Kick-Ass.
Yeah, but it's way more. I don't know what to say, like gritty and sad, and it's not. It doesn't celebrate the powers.
Okay.
It's tragic, really.
I see.
And like a thriller. Anyway, but yeah, Firestarter. The reason why I feel like people don't talk about, I'm surprised people don't talk about it because there's a lot of movies today that you would hold up and say, like Logan, for example.
Right.
It has that kind of tone.
And that was like a first in that kind of movie.
But Firestarter had that going for it way back then in a time when they didn't really make movies about, or many movies about superpowers. Right. Although I will say, any movie about superpowers that was made back then when I was 12, I watched and loved. It was Dream something, where you could invade people's dreams. Dennis Quaid was in it.
Yeah.
I loved that. Dreamscape, I think. I loved that movie. And Dead Zone. With Christopher Walken.
Oh yeah, that was a great.
I actually recently rewatched that movie. Anyway, Annihilation. I actually liked Annihilation. Attack on Titan, I heard, was supposedly a horror.
That's interesting.
Which you could argue maybe. Anyway, Lost Boys, of course.
I couldn't put Attack on Titan as a horror. That's weird.
Yeah, but there's
Lost Boys is fun, but I also couldn't put it as horror because it's
totally horror.
But it's just a fun. I mean, yeah, it's vampires. You're right.
If Twilight Zone is horror, then that's definitely.
But
horror.
It's just a funny movie.
Yeah. I think for some people, what horror means is if you have vampires, it's horror. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A movie called Beloved with Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover from 1998.
Whoa.
I loved this movie when it came out, and I can't remember a single thing about it other than the fact that I remember it being very creepy. And I think it's about like the slave South, like back in the day. Anyway, Midsummer.
Oh yeah.
Another Ari Aster movie, who made Witch, and Florence Pugh. We got Mother.
Oh, I see. That, I guess, counts as horror. You're right.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I didn't put it in my list.
Darren Aronofsky.
Mother is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, David Lynch.
Yep.
A Quiet Place, Emily Blunt and John Krasinski. Under the Skin. Have you seen that movie? Scarlett Johansson. Under the Skin.
No, I have not.
You've got to watch it.
Okay.
It's very interesting. It's like a definitely more artsy than horror, but it's a very interesting premise.
Under the Skin.
Yeah. Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola, Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves.
I feel like Under the Skin came out right around the same time as that other Scarlett Johansson movie.
Well,
that I didn't like.
There
was the one. Remember the one where she starts gaining powers?
Lucy, Lucy. God. So I was just watching a scene from that for whatever reason, YouTube thought I wanted to watch another scene from Lucy, and it's such a stupid movie.
Yeah.
Like, the premise is that Scarlett Johansson is this regular woman, and she somehow accidentally she takes this new super drug, and it starts to give her the ability to use not just 10% of her brain, but 100% of her brain.
Yes.
And so
not immediately. It's just
so that's the premise. Like, over time, yeah. And the movie, it's like, now she can do 20% of her brain.
Yeah.
Now she can do 30% of her brain. And it is the dumbest, the way that they play it out, because they could have been a good movie.
Sure.
Because, one, we don't use 10% of our brain. That would be the dumbest evolved organ. Nothing is like that in biology.
Right.
We use 100% of our brain. We use our entire brain. A lot of calories go into supplying the brain. It would be the dumbest thing to waste all those calories on something that you only use 10% of. So we use all the brain. But anyway, let's say that this drug makes you smarter.
Right.
Okay, fine. It basically makes her into a god.
Right.
Being smart does not make you. She can manipulate
space,
time and
matter,
space.
yeah.
Yeah, she can manipulate matter. She can make things magnetic from afar. She can use telekinesis.
Hey, Kirk, we don't use all of our brain. Like, imagine what's possible.
But to me, if they just made the drug, this is a very weird drug that taps into some like quantum physics, like there could have been another stupid, but instead it makes her smart.
Well, it's like,
therefore she becomes a god.
It's like, imagine, because you can have the same premise, which is actually a fair point. So our muscles, you don't actually use the contraction to its full potential. In fact, that's why like a chimp, one of the reasons they're so much stronger than human is because they don't have the fine control that we have. So when they contract, it's like an all or nothing kind of thing. So you could make a movie where you inject humans with something that makes their muscles stronger, because we only use 60% of our muscles. So now they can shoot fireballs from their hands.
I know, right? It's exactly what happened. Now their hand can become a wristwatch or something. It's like, what? Yeah. Anyway. Twin Peaks. Evil Dead, of course. Bruce Campbell.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah, which I have not seen.
And Army of Darkness is hilarious
since back then, but I remember loving it.
Yeah.
Get Out, Jordan Peele.
Yep.
Rosemary's Baby, the first 98% of the movie is a masterpiece, just of a movie, but of feminism. It's so interesting. And a glimpse into like late 60s New York City. It's just such a great movie. Bird Box. I really loved Bird Box.
That's entertaining. I didn't love it, but it was entertaining.
I thought it was gripping, sad, interesting premise, well acted, just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
When she's with the two kids. And
yep. That's true. I feel like I dinged it unfairly because it came out.
It ended in a kind of like, but how do you end that kind of
That's
movie?
true. It also came out after Quiet Place. And I feel like I unfairly dinged it because it's not the same movie, but it felt related.
And of course, Alien with Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah. All
right, let's take a break, Berto. We get back. Let's answer a few emails. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. Let's do some OPPs.
OPP.
Some old patron praises. These patrons have been patrons, which are great, and they've been patrons all the way since October of 2018. We've been working our way up from 2015 because there are people who have been patrons since 2015. So we've worked our way up to 2018.
At some point, they won't be OPPs.
Yeah. We got David from South Carolina. We got Valerie from Oklahoma City. Thank you for taking our basketball team.
Oklahoma.
Valerie. We got Jill from East Sussex.
Wait, where's East Sussex?
Great Britain.
Oh.
We got Len from God knows where. We have Alexander from Ohio.
Oh.
We got... I heard something about Ohio. on a podcast, they were talking about Ohio, where it's curved on the edges and high in the middle. Do you understand that?
No.
Because there's two O's.
Oh, okay.
So it's curved on the edges and high in the middle.
I thought they were like making a reference to the people.
You got Yolanda from Downey, California. You got Miston from Weatherford, Texas. You got old Liza from Canada. Liza has been on the podcast.
Dear Liza?
Yeah. And if you want to listen to her podcasts, it is called, I think it's like dissociative identity disorder and trauma recovery. I can't remember, but it's a fascinating interview. We also did another episode with her about schema therapy, I believe. Crafts with Ellen from Denmark. I'm guessing Crafts with Ellen has their own Patreon. We got Catherine from Minnesota. We got Sasha from Los Angeles. We have Paul from Vancouver, BC.
Oh, Vancouver. I miss Vancouver.
We have Andy from God knows where. We got Stepan from St. Petersburg, Russia.
What?
Rochelle from God knows where. We got Brittany from Frisco, Texas. Frisco. We got Rebecca from Renton, Washington.
Isn't there a movie called Frisco Kid?
Which is where I was born. We got Beth from God knows where. We got Dom Manel from Lolita, California. Athena from Johannesburg. We have Test from God knows where. Actually, that might be a test
account?
Account that I made.
Oh, I see.
We have
OPP test account.
We have Fabaha from Tempe, Arizona. Amanda from God knows where. Brian from Oakland. Kelsey from Spokane. Stephen from Seattle, who I think we've communicated with before. Julie from Washington, D.C. We got Kirsten from God knows where. I think I know Kirsten. Maybe she's even been on the podcast. Lauren from Richmond, Australia.
What?
Magdalena from God knows where. Bonnie from God knows where. And Tamara from Vancouver, BC. Thank y'all for being patrons and being patrons since all the way back then. Let us do some emails. Berto. An anonymous patron wrote in and said... Thank you for reading my thoughts about the Bo Burnham Inside special. So this is a response to the response. So she wrote in. So we did the episode on Bo Burnham Inside. She wrote in. We read the email on the air, and now she's writing back.
Okay.
Thank you for reading my thoughts aloud about Bo Burnham Inside. The first thing I got was that I should have had more compassion initially for Berto's position about suicide on the Bo Burnham Inside special. Berto went through something very difficult with his family. I wasn't trying to say we should all be able to make jokes about everything, but that Bo Burnham's particular jokes felt empathetic towards my personal experience. All things considered, the podcast would be much less interesting if Berto were more apologetic. So it's
sorry.
So it's okay. LOL.
I'm sorry.
So do you have a response to the response to the response to the response, bro?
That is very touching. And honestly, I think as time has gone on, I care a lot less about his joke, meaning I'm like, yeah, it's fine. But I do remember at the time, I felt strongly, and the reaction to my strong feelings was very strong. So it was very interesting.
Yeah. Go listen to the past episodes about Bo Burnham for that.
Yep.
Anonymous patron wrote in, kind of a long one. So let's see. You flippantly joke. This is to you and me, bro.
Yeah.
You flippantly joked about bath salts as an example of a drug that people take knowing it will turn them into a cannibal. The first time an individual tries Adderall, dexedrine, or even methamphetamine, they feel superhuman. They're able to work 12-hour stretches, increase sociability and sexual performance without the need to eat or sleep. It is only upon repeated dosage that the negative side effects begin. Furthermore, when the man in Florida famously convicted of eating another person's face was assessed, their blood tests came up negative for amphetamines commonly sold as quote-unquote bath salts. And the widespread misinformation was largely caused by the media's bath salt panic of the time, which followed along the same lines as the PCP panic of the late 90s. Bath salts are essentially a cheap, mass-produced analog to Adderall and can be purchased from head shops by people of any age. While they don't frequently result in death via overdose, their highly addictive nature, propensity to cause long-lasting psychosis, liver damage, and other disruptions to the system should not be treated with so much levity in the context of discussing dangers of drug addiction. Berto, what do you think?
Well, I apologize. I probably was on bath salts that day. And because I remember actually later that night, I ate something that really upset my stomach the next day. So, yeah.
Also, Berto mentions Robin Williams as being someone who died of suicide. Suicide can have many different motivations. So, sorry, I'm reading this. Also, Berto mentions Robin Williams as being someone who died of suicide. Suicide can have many different motivations, and based on the words and advocacy of his widow, it is more accurate to say that Robin Williams died of Lewy body dementia. Faced with the rapid loss of his memory, social skills, and personality from Lewy body dementia, Robin Williams was pushed to the point where he no longer saw a future that was preferable to death. This has the effect of taking attention away from research for Lewy body dementia. Berto, what do you think?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean to really say, hey, I don't remember what joke I made about bath salts. Part of what I do in this podcast is give my uneducated opinion about stuff and try to add a little levity. Sometimes that might be inappropriate, but hey, at least I didn't joke about suicide or something. But as far as Robin Williams, I just watched a whole thing about the struggles that he was going through medically that I wasn't aware of. He still did complete suicide, but I think you're talking about like the antecedent causes, and that's fair. I think pretty much all suicides have antecedent causes. Some may be more hard to circumvent than others, but I don't think it was inaccurate. I just don't think we had enough, or I didn't have enough information. I think the whole thing is a tragedy. The fact that he had those struggles, the fact that, that he's not around with us anymore. And it's very sad.
Listener Jay, she wrote in and said, I'm creating a podcast that is meant to help people understand their own psychological needs, and I would love some insight on how to begin. Also, upper-tier patron Kaylee from Wales wrote in similarly and said, I just watched your clip on Rebecca and Zied on 90 Day Fiancé, where you mentioned wanting more professionals to be online. I am keen, but I have no idea where to start. I'm a British mental health professional, so I might add some diversity to the conversation. Could you do an episode on how to get started? Berto, what advice do you have for those who want to start a podcast or a YouTube channel?
Oh, yeah. There is no better time than when you want to start it. You don't actually need that much equipment to get started. Obviously, if you want like better sounding this, that, the other thing, you can buy a little better microphone and whatnot. But the main thing is pick a topic, just grab a little sheet of paper, grab a pencil, write down a few episode ideas. So you have more than like one, and then try recording. And then don't worry about, don't overthink it. Don't sweat the details too much. Just try a recording. No one is listening to you right now. So the barrier to entry initially is very low. We can say that, our first episodes were not all that great, but it doesn't matter. Like, you just get through that. And then you'll find your voice, and then you'll find, like, you'll start figuring out, okay, I think I should do a little bit more of this, or I think I should do a little bit more of that. And then you start finding a niche. It could be two people that are like, hey, I really like your stuff. And then you can start listening to what works and whatnot. But the most important thing is record, put some content out there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And do whatever you can to not get hung up on perfectionism. I've helped a lot of people starting their own content stuff, and one of the biggest barriers is people are just like, it's like they think about it for years, and I've always wanted to do this and that, and they finally get around to it. They have a week of free time. They're like, I'm gonna finally do that thing. And then they make it, and it's never as awesome as they think it's going to be. the reception isn't as awesome as they think it's going to be. And so you just have to prepare for that and say, I don't, the thing that I'll tell people, and I don't know if this helps, but this is what I did, is I didn't care if people liked it or not. I just wanted to do it.
And you have to have that attitude about art.
Yeah. And that's how I've always been with my music.
Yeah.
I've always recorded the songs that I wanted to listen to. And if other people didn't like it, I'm like, well, I made it for me.
Yeah.
So, mission accomplished. I like it, you know, and you got to have that attitude. You have to have like with the podcast, when I started, I just wanted to see what I could make pretty much. And I had a vision of perhaps being big one day ish, but, wasn't married to that, and was pretty much just like, if 100 people listen, that's enough for me, kind of a thing. It's like, that's a lot of people. If you give a talk and 100 people show up, that's a big deal.
That's a lot of people. That's a great point. I never even thought about that. Imagine you're like, I want to go to the U District, go stand in Red Square and talk about a topic that I'm interested in. And you do it, and 100 people gather around to listen to you. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, in academia, this happens all the time. You'll give a training, or you'll hold a talk at the university. It's, like an evening lecture that people can show up to, and you advertise it.
You get like 15 people.
Yeah, you get 15 people. You're like ecstatic, because half the time no one shows.
Right.
So anyway, the other thing, as Berto was saying, was just do it. Don't think, and just make it, and know that no one's going to be listening in the beginning. So it's low stakes in the beginning. Like, it does not matter. It could be years before people pay attention. So,
and to add to this, like, I'll give both a good and a bad example, but that might help. So in addition to working here with Kirk and doing these episodes, I started my own YouTube channel. Now, if you go to it, which is Psychoberto, I have not taken down my first videos, and you can definitely tell the quality is very low in the first couple of videos, and then it gets a little better, and then it gets a little better. And I'm mostly not even content wise. I just mean even like the lighting and the sound and everything.
Oh yeah.
And then like,
not yours, but like,
no, definitely mine.
Everybody who does
everyone,
that,
and definitely mine. Like, because at first that was the good news, is I didn't care, and I just did it because I needed to get it out. But then I bought the better mic, then I bought the little lights, and then by the time, 10 videos in, it looks nice. It sounds pretty good. That said, so that's the good part. The downside is I got some health issues last year, and in October I got really sick, so I stopped producing, and I haven't gone back to it, and I really do want to get back to it. I think maybe it's part of the perfectionism. It's also like fear that I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't know what to say. Well, I need to listen to the same advice. It's like, it doesn't matter. Just because people keep leaving notes. Hey, when is the next video coming?
Yeah.
And to your point just now about the 100 people, I have 300 and some subscribers.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds very little by YouTube standards. But when you put it like, where am I going to go stand in a corner and have 300 people listening to me?
Right. Yeah. And do you like doing it?
I love doing it.
Yeah. So that's all that it really matters. And so there's that. The other thing is to get feedback and listen to it, because this podcast has changed drastically over the years, and a part of it, maybe 50% of it was just because listeners would say this or that, and a lot of praise, like who we like for example, I didn't do a solo episode until years into the podcast, and when I put it out there, I was like, what do y'all think about this? Because this is very strange. Just me on the podcast. And of course now that's ridiculous. Like, a lot of people, it's like, that's what, it's half of this podcast value is when, Kirk's by himself. So,
and you used to run surveys, asking all sorts of questions.
Still do. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What I mean is that, like, when you first started doing that, you listened, like you would read the comments and
right. Yeah. Like, one of the questions on the survey, I asked people about like our political conversations, because I didn't know, because some people praised, some people didn't. And, because most people don't comment is the thing. Most people don't email in. But you send a survey out, you're going to get a lot more people who don't typically write in because surveys feel more inviting, I suppose. Yeah. And like with the political discussions, I learned that, and I also had a question like, what's your political leanings? And something like 90% were left leaning. And even though, we tend to speak from a left leaning voice, the consensus was they just didn't want us talking about politics, even if they agreed with us. Not everyone, of course, but that was the majority voice because, and the majority reason was, look, we just don't come here to, we come here to escape.
Yeah, that's not the content we're looking for.
Yeah, and so we don't want that kind of, even though we agree with you, and even might like to get some validation, we have other places that we go for that kind of content.
Right.
The other thing is to get to the point, which is, funny because I can be extremely long-winded, but whenever I listen to podcasts or YouTube channels for the first time, one of the first things that will get me to turn it off and never go back to that podcast or YouTube channel is if you do not get to the effing point.
Right.
Like it's got to be in the first sentence. Like, I am going to do this and just start into it. Just if you're going to talk about, I don't know, how to grow a plant inside, it should, in the first 5 seconds, the viewer, the listener should already be getting some value.
I have one very important tip for this. So like as far as like a tip for how to get to the point immediately. And it's a tip that I learned watching an episode of a history movie. And they were talking about a long time ago in different civilizations, different aspects of, what was I saying?
I thought you were going to go longer with that. I mean, I was just kind of hoping you were going to go longer with that.
I didn't want to like really dig into it.
No, because right away I just it's like Berto's making a joke. But and I don't do this all the time, but I try to. Like in the very beginning, I had music and video introductions, and then there'd be this kind of preamble discussion, and then we'd finally get to the topic, which honestly is 90% of content producers, that's what they do. And I just have to say, as a consumer, unless I'm really into the content like Conan O'Brien or something, like I'll just listen anyway. And I don't mind the banter. But especially if I'm kind of on the fence about something, if I have to wait, especially if we're 5 minutes in and you still haven't gotten to the point, and I don't know when the point is coming, like, is it coming a minute from now or is it coming 15 minutes from now? Like, I'll bounce. Like, I'm done. I don't care how good the information is. I don't want to sit through that kind of annoyance.
I think it also varies on what you are there for. For example, I've listened to the Victory, the podcast, which is about the Entourage folk, the TV show Entourage. And honestly, for me, the point of that podcast is just to listen to them banter. So even though they have a topic.
That's what I'm saying, like Conan O'Brien or TBTL, it's all banter, and they never get to the point. But that's why. But I could see people tuning in and like going, "This is stupid. I'm out."
And yet a lot of the channels that I like on YouTube are definitely to the point. It's like, here's the topic, and they get to it.
Right. The final two things I'll say to people who want to create their own content is to find your voice and give yourself time to find your voice. Like for me, it took 10 years for me to find my voice. Like it took a long time. Like it's funny when I listen to some reruns from even just like 3 or 4 years ago, I have a different voice. It's not terrible, but it's not me. It's still kind of like I don't know. It just takes a while to find your content with.
Well, if you go back and listen to those early episodes, remember I used to talk like this, but it took me a while to find my voice.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is to keep doing it and be consistent about it. The people that I know who have been successful, they committed, and they just made a commitment. They're just like, I'm going to do this once a month or once a week, and I'm going to release it on, Tuesdays of every week, and it's just going to happen.
Right.
And if something gets in the way, I'm going to do it anyway. It's going to happen, and I'll prioritize it because because in the first couple years, because no one's listening, it's easy to give up on it. You know, there's always going to be something else that'll be more interesting or be less work, because it's work. You know, you got to it's work, and
definitely
to make something that's any good, usually it's work. And so if you commit to it and you just say, I'm not going to think about it, you know, I'm not going to question it, I'm just going to do it, you're much more likely to build an audience over time, and 2, to find your voice, and 3, the few people who like you learn to depend on you. You know, it's, you know, for me, and I know for you too, Berto, the podcasts and the YouTube channels that we consume, there's a regularity to it.
Yeah.
It's not just like a few episodes and then dark for 5 months, right?
And unfortunately, I have some that I like that are like that, and it's heartbreaking because...
Right. Like Dan Carlin's history podcast. He puts out like 1 episode a year on his podcast.
Really?
Yeah, something like that. And so, but you'd have to be so good to sustain an audience with that kind of sporadic, and that's rare. Like you're essentially like, you know, God level podcaster if you can get away with that. But you know,
right.
But the ones that I like, it just like it comes out in this regular fashion. And when, you know, people like things to be predictable, and when you find your content provider, you know, your YouTube channel, and it just feels good to go back to them every once in a while, you know, like there's this guy who repairs guitars in Canada that I watch. And his username is really weird. It's like it's like a bunch of letters kind of crammed in anyway. Okay. But he makes, you know, he'll make jokes, but it's pretty much just him working on guitars, repairing guitars, and talking about the process. And it's like 45-minute videos. And I will sit there and watch, and I don't repair guitars.
Right.
I play guitar, but I don't repair guitars. And I'll just sit there and watch him repair a guitar and talk about it for 45 minutes. And he puts out episodes like every week or every 2 weeks. And every time an episode, I watch it, you know?
I was addicted for a while too. One called Lofty Pursuits, and it's this guy who makes candy in Florida, Tallahassee, and it's just showing he's making all these, and he's got all these classical machines, like, you know, 100-year-old machines for making candy, and that's all it is. I don't make candy.
Yeah,
I don't eat that much candy, but it's like,
I don't eat
so fascinating.
Yeah, I've watched my fair share of candy making channels. There's this one Japanese one that's. It's like they're in the middle of a mall or something, or a food court, and they make it in front of crowds, and it's so interesting. Yeah, so 2 things. One, love the candy making YouTube channels, and there's like 3 that I watch. But the second point is, I'm never eating candy again because I didn't realize it was just pure fucking sugar.
It is sugar.
It's pure sugar.
It's sugar.
Like, to me, when I would see a Jolly Rancher or something, I thought there'd be something else in there,
like,
you know?
lime,
or like some kind of plant material, like I don't know what I thought,
cellulose, fiber.
Yeah, some kind of fibrous thing. It's just
the candy.
It's melted and hardened, you know, slightly flavored, slightly colored.
There's a
sugar.
teeny bit of water in it,
right? And so, and in other kinds of things, you know, like caramel, or, you know, all those things, it's just
butter and sugar.
It's terrible for you. And so, like,
I recently learned that caramel is butter and sugar.
Right. Yeah. Listener Quinn, she says, I really want to start a podcast where I talk about my experiences and where I am now. My question to you is, do you think it's a good idea for me to talk about my trauma on the podcast? Talk therapy has been healing for me in my life. I simply want to tell my story, how I've gotten to where I am, and my healing mechanisms. Maybe even interview other people in my life who have experienced trauma. I want to destigmatize talking about our painful traumatic experiences. Is this something that you would say, go for it, or no? I'd love to hear your thoughts if you can comment. Berto, what do you think?
This one's interesting. I would say, first of all, me personally, I've talked a lot about my trauma and my, you know, childhood and struggles that I've had. And for me, it's been helpful. It's almost like therapy in a way. And I think it's been helpful for other listeners because, you know, we've heard from them saying, oh, this is really helpful. I can relate, and that helps me think through it and stuff like that. At the same time, I want to caution that you should be aware that if you're putting this stuff out there, it's out there. Anyone can listen to it. It is out there. So, for example, as we've gotten bigger, now I know that I might meet someone in a professional capacity or out, whatever, and they might have listened, or they may listen, and they will know all these things.
Right.
And I just have to be okay with it. I happen to be okay with it, but it is maybe not for everyone. So just be aware of that. This isn't something you can easily take back.
Right.
Even if you delist your videos, you know, there might be copies. People have watched them. They might post about it. Yeah, it's hard for it to like go away.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, absolutely, Quinn. The world needs your voice and more people like you. So absolutely. The one thing that you want to be cautious about is making sure you don't re-traumatize yourself. And as Berto say, overexpose yourself. So you just want to be careful and think about what it is that you're going to disclose and why and what the consequences might be. But absolutely, I feel like the question, Quinn, is based on this premise that it's wrong or it's too much information or something, and it's not. This sort of thing, as you say, needs to be destigmatized. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be understood. It needs you can lead the way. So many people are ashamed, as you know, Quinn, of even admitting it to themselves. And for you to come out strong and just be like, here it is. And we've had guests on the podcast who have, Berto himself has led the way in a lot of ways. So if we're going to destigmatize, we can say, let's destigmatize, or we can just act from a destigmatized place, which I think is the best way to do it. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.